come down to someone kind of taking the game to themselves and creating that moment, and also just working for each other. It's sometimes not pretty in overtime, but we kept on grinding, and finally got the goal we needed.
Welcome back to this edition of Talon Talk Thursdays. I'm Brock Borgeson. In that clip, you heard from head women's soccer coach Eric Faulkner as he discussed a very exciting ASUN opening victory against Liberty last Sunday at home. This week, we will have women's soccer redshirt freshman Emma Voigt on the show to discuss and go into a marathon comeback from 5 surgeries, a MRSA infection, and 3 ACLs to now appear in all 11 of UNF's 2019 matches so far. It was a busy week again this fall. Teams opened fall practice, others continued fall exhibition games, and others continued on with their regular seasons. Men's and women's basketball opened up their fall practice schedule last week as they gear up for their seasons, which start in very early November. Baseball played in its first fall exhibition, shutting down FSCJ 8-0, and softball will be on the diamond tomorrow against Seminole State College in the first of its fall exhibition games. Men's and women's cross country completed their second to last meet prior to the ASUN Championships when they competed at the Gans Creek Classic in Columbia, Missouri. The men took 4th of 10 while the women nabbed 5th. Men's soccer played to what was another exciting match at Hodges Stadium. They finished it with a double overtime draw against FGCU. Men's soccer goalkeeper Padraig Gilly ended up earning ASUN Defensive Player of the Week honors as UNF picked up a point in the conference standings. Women's golf played very well at the Lady Paladin Invitational. They took 3rd of 16 teams, and UNF finished ahead of USF, UNC Wilmington, Kansas, and Coastal Carolina, among others. Volleyball opened ASUN play last week against 2 of the conference bests, and they were on the road at Liberty and Kennesaw State. They fell in both those contests, but redshirt junior Gabby O'Connell continued to clip away, earning another milestone, 800 digs for her career in the match against Kennesaw. And leading into today's interview, women's soccer had another big week. They made it 3 straight wins after a 4-0 win against South Carolina State Thursday and a 1-0 overtime triumph against Liberty thanks to Thais Hayes' golden goal in the 97th minute. And riding high off that note, let's now get to our interview today with Emma Voigt. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So you guys won 4-0 against South Carolina State. You had another assist in that game, and you've had a goal this year against FAU. Last year you took a red shirt, and we're just talking, kind of going through your timeline leading up to that red shirt that year, and you said you had a 22-month kind of hiatus where you weren't playing, but obviously you were a big star in high school. There's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of it was a path of injuries. Just kind of take us through the timeline that you had with your injuries and when it started and, your first injury and go on from there.
Right. So my sophomore year, 2015, I tore my ACL for the first time in a high school game. And I rehabbed from that, had my surgery done in St. Augustine, rehabbed for about 9 months, and then came back and played. And then a few months later, I remember I was playing and I felt another pop, but I was like, I'm fine, I didn't think I had retorn it. It felt different. So I continued to play on it for a few more months, but it just kept getting worse and worse, and eventually I couldn't play on it anymore. So I went to the doctor to see what was wrong, and it turns out I had retorn it again, and along with my MCL and PCL. And so I had another surgery done, this time with Dr. Bates in Jacksonville. And I remember after the surgery, it was just like unreal pain, so different from the first time, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I lost my appetite. I couldn't go to school because I couldn't stand up for that long without feeling dizzy. It was really strange. I didn't know what was wrong. So I went and saw a bunch of doctors, and they were all like, "You're fine," So I continued to go out, whatever. And finally, I was like, no, I can't go through this anymore. So we went to some doctor in Jacksonville, and he ran some tests, and turns out I had MRSA and Enterobacter. I think that's how you say it.
So what's the difference between those? So MRSA and then it's just another bacterial issue.
Yeah, it's just 2 infections. And so I went in for surgery the very next morning, and they had cleaned it all out, and I spent 2 weeks in Wolfson's. And I remember they told me I was clean, ready to go home, and then eventually I would get another surgery done. Or no, sorry, I was good to go home and keep going. And I remember I went home, and that night I just felt so sick again. It was so weird.
Was it like nausea, or was it like a flu-like symptom,
it was
or
almost
was
just
it
like dizziness? Like if
you
I
just
even
disoriented?
Sat up, yeah,
like
felt
vertigo or
sick,
something.
Wasn't eating. At this point, I'd already lost like 15 pounds. Yeah. So the next morning, I went right back to the hospital, and turns out the infections had never gone, and they're actually worse. And so they rushed me into surgery again, cleaned it out. This time they actually, I think they took everything out this time, my ACL, everything. So then I spent another about week and a half in the hospital. They cleaned it out, whatever. They put a PICC line in my arm.
What's that?
It's like a needle that goes into your arm, and it kind of goes all the way to your heart.
It's kind of like
it's
a
like
stint,
little, like,
kind of, or something
sorry,
like it. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And every morning my mom would push antibiotics through it for about, I think it was like a month I had it in.
So you're taking injections through there,
right, yeah,
every day.
Yeah.
And was it like a substantial needle, a pretty big one, or to get through there?
No, not really.
Yeah.
It's just kind of inserted into like a little hole thing, and I had to like cover it up every day.
Could you do, could you go about your day with it, or were you like bedridden during this time?
Oh no, I could go throughout my day. I just had to keep it covered and yeah. So then after a month of that and just making sure I was good, I went back to the hospital and had my final surgery where they put everything back in my knee, redid it all, and there I started my rehab process to get back on the field.
So the first couple surgeries that you had, I know one of them was a cadaver. Was another one a graft from something else in your body, or were they both cadavers?
The first one was a graft.
Yeah.
I think they used my quad.
Okay.
For that one.
Quad
and
tendon or hamstring or something. Yeah.
I think it was a little bit of both. And then the second one was a cadaver.
Could you tell the difference in stability between those two types of replacements, or was it just kind of the same?
Honestly, it was kind of the same. Yeah. The second one, I was in a lot more pain. That might have been part of it. Yeah. I'm not sure though.
Well, and the second one was the one that was getting rejected.
Right.
Okay. And so we kind of touched on this, but what was going through your mind when you just felt ill? Were you thinking it was an infection thing, or you just kind of thought it was generally I'm dealing with post-surgery ailments, or what?
Well, the second time when I remember going home and I couldn't sleep or anything. I was just in so much pain. My mom was just like, I think it's because there's metal in it this time, which I figured that was why.
And they didn't do the rods the first time?
No, they didn't. And so I remember just thinking, it'll get better, and then it just kept getting worse. And that's what didn't make sense. And so that's why we kept going back to the doctor to see what was wrong.
And because you noted that she was pretty persistent in trying to get you back there.
Yeah.
And kind of convincing them that this isn't normal.
Right. My mom was like my advocate.
Yeah.
She was like, she knows her body, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Doctors weren't really listening, I'm not going to lie. So
Yeah, for sure. So after your first tear, let's backtrack. When you got the tear, what was going through your mind then? Did you think that you were going to have to, change your style of play at that point, or, being so young still in high school, some can adjust and they go on and you'd have no idea that they had an ACL tear. But for other people, they lose that step and sometimes they're more of a finesse player or whatever it was. Did it change for you, or are you kind of able to keep with it? Yeah.
Well, when I first tore it, I was pretty young. I was 15.
Right.
And at that point, I already had like teammates or other people I knew tear their ACL, and they were back playing just as normal, So I thought, I have plenty of time before college, before I need to like prepare for that. So I thought I would be just as good, getting back, which I was really confident in myself the first time. It was definitely hard mentally, but.
Yeah. What was the key for you to, kind of overcome that mental hurdle with the first injury? Because, you think about anybody who plays basketball with an ACL tear, Achilles tear, pitcher tears his Tommy John ligament, and they're kind of feeling out what their body can do. Did you have that like process in that phase?
For sure. Going through it, I thought it would mainly just be like physically tough, getting your strength back and whatnot. But it was the exact opposite. It was all mental, honestly. Like just having like believe in yourself. Like, because when you first come out of surgery, you're like, I'm never going to be able to play again. Like this isn't. And then you just have to like keep telling yourself like you got it. You just got to keep pushing in rehab. And there were times I cried at rehab, just like
Were the tears like pain tears, or was it like discouragement?
I think it was more like discouragement, frustration. Just as an athlete, you just want to be back on the field, and having to work towards that. Like, it's obviously worth it. It's just really tough.
Yeah. What was your rehab like? What were some of the things that you had to do then? And do you still do a lot of those, exercises that were prescribed to you then?
I do, actually. Now that we have weights in college,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a lot of knee prehab.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that keeps my knee strong. And the reason people tear their ACLs in the first place a lot of times are just from overworking and not doing enough, like strengthening with it. So now I'm being extra careful and doing what I was taught in rehab.
Yeah.
Just,
So they say, some people that they tear their ACL, they might be predisposed to it, or a certain Q angle in their knee or in their leg. Was there anything that they addressed, or was it just kind of a freak thing for you think? And what are the things that you strengthen, like quad more, hamstring, stretching? Yeah. So a couple questions there.
Yeah. Well, I never thought I'd be wanting to tear my ACL just because there's no like warning signs or anything.
It just occurs.
Right. No, it's so random. But I did have really bad knees growing up. I had Osgood slaughter.
Okay. Yeah.
So knees were always a struggle. My whole family has really bad knees. Then one game, I was literally just running. The first time was no contact.
So it was a no contact. Were you changing direction?
I was going to cut outside, and then I changed really fast to go inside, and all of a sudden my knee just popped.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking when I went down, like, a pop. I know, like, people who tear their ACL, like,
it's
they always say they
ligament,
hear a pop.
Yeah.
And so I started freaking out, and I was in the most pain I'd ever been in. And then all of a sudden, like 3 minutes later, I felt fine. It was so strange.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do say that with ligaments because it has the point of impact. It's like,
right.
and afterwards, if you're not moving it or it's not disrupting the internal, structure of it, you're not going to feel it. So did it go away for a while, or were you just in the immediate pain, and then it kind of, as long as I wasn't running, I was all right?
It was immediate pain for like 3 minutes, and then I came off the field, and I felt kind of almost like stupid for
You're like, what am I doing? Like,
I was like,
I feel
fine now.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to go back on really bad, but my coach was like, no, you heard a pop, like, that's not a good sign. You need to get checked out before you go on. And I actually did go to the doctor the next day, and he had told me I was fine and that I could keep playing. And so I went to practice.
So they didn't do the stability test?
They did the stability test. They said I was fine. And so I went back to practice, and my coach was like, I don't know, like, that just sounds too bad. I want you to get an MRI before you play. I was just so mad because I was like, I'm fine, And then thank God I did, because they got my MRI results back, and he called right away. It was like, yeah, actually, she's going to have surgery next week.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough to go through that, for the, first couple of days without having it addressed. And then, so the second time the injury is a little bit different. You kept playing on it for a couple months. So had you torn your ACL at that point, or was that initial tear like the MCL or whatever, the other cruciate ligaments?
I'm not sure exactly. I just remember, actually, a funny fact, the second time I tore it, we were playing the same exact team on the same field.
Yeah, so you don't really want to play there anymore.
No. But I remember I went into a tackle, and I felt 3 pops, and it didn't feel the same as the first time. So in my head, I was just, and I didn't want to admit to myself that I'd hurt myself again. So I was like, no, I'm fine. And they actually let me go back on. Yeah. And I went back on, and I scored, and we actually ended up winning the game.
Wow.
So, it was like the adrenaline. I think I was, I'm fine. So I kept playing, and for the next, I think it was 2 months, every time I would play, my knee would almost, pop out of place. I could tell it wasn't stable.
Would, lock in and out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And my knee is just so swollen almost every day. It was the size of a softball. It was so big. And then eventually, I just couldn't play on it anymore. And I was like, all right, I'll go to the doctor. And I still didn't believe it was torn. It just hadn't felt the same as the first time. Yeah,
you probably had just, the swelling just probably got in the way. You felt a lot of heat there.
Right,
and you can't, cut in and out. So at that point, you get the second one. Do you think, can I play soccer again? Was that going through your mind before the doctor said that she probably isn't going to play?
Yeah, well, when I first found out, I thought, okay, well, what if I rehab this time and then I just tear it again? That's what goes through your mind. But then the doctor told me that the first surgery hadn't been done right. So that kind of gave me more hope, as in, okay, this time if it's done right, then it'll be good for the rest of the time I play. But so when I found out I had to get another surgery, I kind of mapped it out in my head. 9 more months, okay, I'll have time to train and be ready for my freshman year at UNF. And then that's when I, few weeks later, I found out I had an infection, and then I mapped it out again in my head, and I realized I wouldn't be ready in time.
Okay.
I think that's what killed me
Yeah.
the most.
So what was the reason? So you addressed the infection with whatever they need to do to clean it. Was there like extra just like invasive surgery from dealing with the infection that pushed the timeline back more?
Yes. So when the third surgery, when they cleaned it out and they thought I was good, and then they realized that the infection actually hadn't gone away, they told me that they had to take everything out of my knee. And after that, I had to wait at least 8 weeks. So when I realized that
8 weeks of doing any rehab
8 weeks
or
of nothing,
using
just letting it, sit basically, and the PICC line just doing its job and cleaning all the infection out. Because if I were to get another surgery and there were any bit of infection left, it would have been all for nothing.
So how much time did you have before the MRSA really did damage you? Like, were you on did you later learn if you hadn't gotten this taken care of within the next couple of days, you would have had some bad problems?
Yeah. So when I first got diagnosed with the infections, the doctor actually told me if I would have waited 2 more days that I possibly could have died.
Yeah.
Which was super scary.
It goes up to your heart and gets in your bloodstream.
Yeah, it spreads throughout your whole body, and then there's nothing you can really do. And I remember my mom just freaking out.
She's probably very
so
angry at people.
Oh,
yeah. So, so you have that one. You have the MRSA. Well, how are you getting around? Are you going to school? Are you going to classes normally? What type of cast are you in?
You talking about before I?
So after the MRSA,
after.
dealing with the MRSA.
So
problem.
After I dealt with the MRSA and got that all cleaned out, I started going to school, I think about 2 weeks later. I had my big brace on, went down from my ankle all the way up to the top of my thigh. And I was on crutches too for a while. And my teachers were super nice about it. They helped me out, and obviously I missed a lot of school, so they helped me with that. And then just walking around. Our high school was pretty big, so that was kind of tough. But
I mean, you seem pretty tough-minded and driven. So was it hard for you to not be able to just do the normal things that you could do every day and be on the soccer field and perform?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And also it was the middle of my senior year, so I missed so many things like that. And then I missed my whole season. I couldn't even go watch some of the games, and just it was tough.
At what point did you commit to UNF?
I committed, I think it was a few months after my first surgery.
Okay. So you commit, and then you have these injuries, and you think, and going in your mind, you might have another. And so at the time, how did that go? Were they stay firm with the scholarship, or did you have fear that, you wanted to end up here?
Yeah. So Robin knew I had my first surgery, which she was still really confident in me. Robin's the old head coach as well. And then after all my other surgeries, or after I think it was the second or third, I realized I had to call her and tell her what had happened, because she hadn't heard about it yet. And I was so scared. I thought, as a coach, hearing your player about to get, has already had 3 knee surgeries, it's just worrisome. But I called her, and she was so unbelievably nice, had so much confidence in me. She, motivated me to get better. And so she actually would talk to my mom and me, and just, they were really helpful. So was Devin, the assistant coach.
So you had that behind you. Yeah. So you always knew that I'm working towards this goal, and I'm going to be at UNF. Yeah. So that's good for you to have that goal mapped out. How did your game change? How has your game changed? What type of player were you? Or what type of player are you still? Or have you adjusted consciously?
Well, when I was coming back last spring, I got to play, and it was super tough mentally, I think, because just coming back, you can't do just simple things I was so used to doing so naturally weren't going my way. And I was just always frustrated with myself. And Eric pulled me aside one day and was like, listen, you're going to have a new 100%. Your 100% before your surgeries is not going to be your 100% now. And you just need to learn what that is and use your strengths and weaknesses. And so at first I didn't have my explosiveness, which was really tough, because that's what I always was really great at, was exploding. And I was always a player who found the back of the net and was able to score. And I've gotten that back a lot. I don't think I am how I used to be as much, but I've definitely found what works for me and how I need to change my play a little bit. So I'm getting there, and I think I've gotten there. Like since last spring, I've already developed so much.
Yeah. How was adjusting to just conditioning and gameplay and time on the field?
Well, I remember like last fall when they were practicing, I would do a lot of conditioning. So I think that wasn't too bad, but definitely like speed of play. You know, that was hard to come back into and just remember like play fast and
That ball control and dribbling skills and just ability to pass, kind of the more tactile skill part of the sport, was that hard to come back with, or was it just second nature?
For the most part, it was like second nature, but like I said, like there are little things that I'd be like, why did that not go my way?
I thought I was used to having this happen. Yeah.
I thought the ball would go over here, but instead it went over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, like little things like that would just be super frustrating. And that would be for any player. Any player coming back from injury, it's just going to be frustrating, but just have to get over that mental block, and then it's all there. It all comes back eventually.
So what did they do for your training here? And you mentioned really kind of emphasizing strengthening yourself in the weight room. Is that, the muscles around your knee, or just collectively? And what are some like kind of tricks of the trade that you've learned to make yourself better?
Well, in the weight room, we focus on everything. So like we'll have, leg day one day and upper body. So I'll kind of modify some things to maybe focus more on my left leg, because it's still not as strong as my right leg, actually. And then Jordan, our athletic trainer, she's super awesome. She has me do like little things, helps me out. So I've just, learned to do what's best for me and not to get hurt again, hopefully.
Yeah. What have you learned about like kind of that whole world now? Like, do you see like kind of the rehabilitation, sports medicine, strength and conditioning world differently?
I have a whole new appreciation for it. Not gonna lie, sometimes I used to think like, I don't need this, but that's the whole reason we get hurt, is because we're not focusing on those things. We're not strengthening our bodies, or the parts that need to be strengthened in order to keep ourselves healthy. So whole new appreciation.
I know a lot of people that end up having these injuries and recurring injuries, or they have back problems or whatever. They want to be chiropractors. Right. They want to be physical therapists. Has that ever interested you, or what's your goal kind of off the field and in the classroom?
Actually, at first, when I was first coming to UNF, I wanted to work in physical therapy. That's what my goal was my freshman year. And then I actually switched to sports management. Okay. I really just want to work around sports. I love it. I love watching any sport, doing it. Yeah. Sure.
So obviously that probably factored into why you chose UNF. What was kind of the driving factor for you coming here out of high school and choosing UNF? Because obviously Division I athletes are definitely going to get recruited from other places. Yeah.
Actually, at first I wanted to go as far away as possible from home, which is ironic because I chose the closest school. Yeah. But when I came on my visit here, I fell in love with it. The team was so awesome. They're all so close, which is what I wanted. Because when you have a team that's close and you're like sisters, you just play so much better. You work so much better together, and it's so much more enjoyable. So when I came here, they all made me feel like family already, and and so I loved it. And the coaches were awesome. So I went home to my mom, and I was like, Mom, I think I want to go here. Yeah. So it was cool.
How is it playing kind of down the street from where you grew up? And, what are your thoughts about growing up and aspiring to play maybe for UNF or a school like it?
It's actually awesome getting to play close to home, because my mom has always been...
She's like our, photographer for most of the games too.
She's the one taking pictures on site, yeah.
Does she travel?
She goes to as many games as she can, with work. And I have two little sisters. So yeah. But yeah, I knew I wanted her to come to my games as much as she could, and this makes it so much easier. She's at every home game, and
she's kind of your documentarian in some ways.
My mom's awesome. She was there through everything. She stayed every night at the hospital with me. She didn't miss a single night. She had to miss her work, which obviously was hard for her. She's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Who was she an influence in you playing soccer, or was there an influence or kind of a role model?
I started playing when I was 4 years old. It was just kind of random. I loved it. And then I remember when I realized I had to start playing more competitively. There wasn't really a super competitive club in St. Augustine. And she's the one who drove me an hour 3 times a week to Jacksonville for practice. And on the weekends, she would travel with us to hotels, like tournaments or whatever, which is super hard, on a single mom or whatever. So she was definitely my influence. Like there was no way I could have done that or made it to college soccer without her.
Yeah, because that's a lot of commitment with time.
Yeah,
I mean, you're probably traveling around. I mean, I guess in the region probably too, but out of just Florida.
We went to like Las Vegas, Oklahoma.
Oh wow.
We went super far, and she was at everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there somebody on the field in college that you watch growing up or professionally that you kind of, model yourself after, and how would you describe yourself, in comparison to one of those players, like similar?
I always looked up to national team players.
Mm-hmm.
Mia Hamm was like my favorite player. I was always number 9 growing up. I wanted to be just like her. And actually at one of our tournaments, she was the guest speaker.
Really?
And I remember
Did you get to talk to her?
I met her. I got a picture with her. I started crying when I saw her. So I always like looked up to players like that. Megan Rapinoe, she's awesome. She's doing so much off the field, with politics and stuff. So I've always looked up to players like that.
Yeah. Would you ever want to pursue something strictly within soccer after playing, or you said obviously sports management specifically, coaching wise, or how has your view about coaching changed already within the first couple of years here?
I actually have thought about coaching before, maybe younger players, just because this is a lot. But
it is commitment.
Yeah, I look at the coaches now. They're so, I don't know how they do it. They stay up late every night watching film, doing whatever they can to make us better. So yeah, I appreciate my coaches so much. That's definitely one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What this year you guys got off to a really hot start. What has allowed that, and what's the culture of the team like?
So last spring when Eric became head coach, I think everything kind of changed for the better. And we all got super close as a team. I remember, I don't know what really changed that, but we're all just so much closer than we were last year. I count them literally all as my sisters, and which made it so much better. We all enjoy going to practice. We all enjoy doing every little thing we can, which is great. And I think so when we started the season, we were super duper excited. Preseason was super strong. We had our first game. We went out and killed it. And we've been scoring. We've actually scored more goals this season so far than we did last season altogether, which is insane. So yeah, I think we just have our commitment and our passion just is more than it's ever been. We're just driving for our goal, make it to the ASUN champ.
So for you, what's your goal this season individually, and then throughout your career here?
This year I just want to play whatever part I can to get us that title, take us as far as we can. Throughout my career here, I just want to play the best I can, as much as I can.
Be on that
field.
Do
whatever I can. Yeah, be on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, Emma, and talking about that injury and your recovery, because that can be a touchy subject sometimes too. Yeah. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
This weekend, look forward to swimming's home opener with a big CCSA try with Campbell and FGCU. That's going to be at noon Friday from the Bulls School. Volleyball plays in its ASUN home opening weekend against FGCU and NGIT. That will be Friday and Saturday night. Both matches start at 7. And men's soccer goes across town to take on JU in the first event in the 2019-20 edition of the River City Rumble. Kickoff is set for 7 p.m. Saturday night. And the women's soccer team, they'll be on the road now after a long homestand. They'll be at Kennesaw State tonight, and they're going to go to Newark to face the Highlanders of NGIT on Sunday. Women's tennis gets back into action and on the courts in fall competition with the Bedford Cup. That's going to be October 4th through 6th in Fort Myers. And softball begins fall exhibition play Friday at home against Seminole State College. Again, follow along with all of the action at unfospreys.com, where you can find all of our events, articles, and social media content. Thanks again for listening to this week's edition of Talon Talk.